This is Emily Hull with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State University. Today is Friday, February 2nd, 2018, and I'm in Tulsa at the Archer Building interviewing Kristi Eaton for the Deep Roots Oklahoma Authors Oral History Project. Kristi, you're an award-winning journalist, an avid world traveler, and author, and currently a 2018 Tulsa Artist Fellow. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you for having me.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Tulsa, just about 10 miles from here,
Mm-hmm.
and I also grew up in Tulsa.
All right. What was it like growing up in Tulsa?
It was pretty idyllic. I grew up in South Tulsa. I went to Jinx public schools, and my mom was a teacher there. I was involved in gymnastics when I was younger, so that was kind of my passion for a long time. I remember going to church every Sunday with my parents, and my brother was involved in baseball, so we went to lots of baseball games.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty standard childhood. I did, when I was around age 11, I did suffer from anorexia,
Mm-hmm.
so I was hospitalized a couple times, and that kind of shaped me as an individual, made me much more aware of like mental illness and just the struggles that people sometimes face behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Yeah. So how would you describe Tulsa to a person who's never visited here? What's special about this city?
I think it's kind of quirky in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to say it's kind of blue in a very red state.
Yeah.
And the people are very, very nice. That's one thing that I can say over and over again is that people are very kind.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never meet a mean person in Tulsa. And I think the history that we have here, and especially around the tribal history, is really interesting. I really like learning about the tribes, and so I like the history that we have around that.
So you were competitive in gymnastics as a kid. Did you dream of going to the Olympics, or what were your dreams as?
Yes,
as a
I did. I started when I was around age 6. Started gymnastics, and at that point, I did want to be in the Olympics. I ended up quitting around age 14 or 15,
Mm-hmm.
so I never got there. But I was really competitive and really loved it. It was a good experience for me. I think it taught me a lot of values that I still carry to this day.
Yeah, just that tenacity.
Yeah.
That a gymnast
Yeah,
has to have,
perseverance
sure.
and dedication. Yeah.
So what led you to journalism?
So it's funny, after I quit gymnastics, I kind of needed something to do with my time because I was devoting so much time to gymnastics. I was in high school, getting ready to start high school, and there was an opening for a yearbook position. So I joined the yearbook staff and did that for 4 years of high school. And during that time, I also started writing for the local Jinx Journal newspaper, having a column every week.
Oh.
So that got me interested in that. And I knew by the time I finished high school that I wanted to study journalism in college, which I did.
What was your column about?
It was called Eaton Out, and it was just different things. One time we went to Chicago, and I wrote about my time in Chicago.
Oh.
Then sometimes it was about I might go to an establishment to eat. And it was just kind of whatever I thought and wanted to write about.
Yeah. What or who inspired that path in your life? Did you have a mentor that you kind of worked with in college, or someone that you crossed paths with that really inspired you to be a journalist?
Well, so in college, I worked at the school newspaper at Arizona State. I went to Arizona State University, and I worked at the school newspaper, and I'd say I always looked up to the people who were older than me,
Mm-hmm.
like the editors, and saw what they were doing. And then I also had a professor at ASU who I really looked up to. So I would say mostly the fellow students were those that I looked up to.
So when did you start traveling as a reporter, or learn how to do that?
Yeah. So my first job out of college was on the island of Saipan in the Western Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked at a daily newspaper out there. And so that's when I really started traveling. I traveled to China and to Fiji and Samoa for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like what started the travel bug. And I did that for about a year. And then I came back to the mainland United States. And a few years ago, I moved to Cambodia and did freelance journalism there.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I traveled to Thailand and Myanmar, different countries like that. And then last year I was in India for a fellowship. So I'm really fascinated by Asia.
Yeah.
And so I try to go back there whenever I can.
So how do you adjust to living in those new places and becoming part of the community and gaining people's trust to write about them?
Yeah, well, like when I moved to Saipan, it was, I think, just getting to know people and learning about the culture. The culture out there is Chamorro and Carolinian,
Mm-hmm.
and learning about the culture and meeting with sources and just talking to them and learning about the island's history. The same thing in Cambodia. I read as many books as I could,
Mm-hmm.
and just getting to talk to people and also talking to fellow journalists. That was also really helpful, talking to journalists who had lived there before and like what they needed to know when they got there. But it was a great experience, and I think learning to live in a community is really a good skill to have.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like being a woman who was in these places? Because a few of the places that you've mentioned, you know, travelers kind of run into some issues.
Yeah.
Thailand and India.
Yeah, it was okay. In India, I was definitely very careful. I saw lots of patriarchy in India.
Sure.
And I talked to a friend who'd went there before me, and she had kind of warned me about some issues. And I've also read a lot about some of their issues.
Yeah.
And so I was a little nervous. So I took some precautions, like I didn't take trains. I ended up, I traveled throughout the country, but instead of taking a train, I hired a driver to take me from place to place. And I didn't really go out at night much, and I didn't really drink, just all as kind of precautions.
Yeah.
But it ended up being perfectly fine and safe and everything. But and I never really felt unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be careful.
Yeah. So when did you start thinking of yourself as a writer? Was there a moment in childhood where you were just like, yes, I love writing stories. I want to know more about this?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wrote my first story when I was, I think, in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
And it was called Q Bear's First Christmas. And it was about a bear who got a puppy for Christmas, because I really wanted a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I wrote it and I illustrated it, and then my mom made a little jacket for it.
Yeah. Do you still have it?
Yeah, she still has it somewhere at their house. So yeah, I wrote that, and then in first grade, part of our curriculum was to write books, and so like I wrote even more then. So I would say I was a writer back even then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a storyteller, and with your illustrations.
Yeah.
Do you think that interest in the visual kind of plays into what you do with your photography too? Because you also kind of document through photography what you do.
Yeah, I actually, growing up, I was pretty creative. I would go home, this was before I joined gymnastics, but I'd go home and like spend hours just making stuff upstairs, like dioramas or draw or things like that, cut things out. And so I was really creative when I was younger, and I think I've kind of morphed that into like photography and like the writing aspect of it.
Is there a particular place that you visited that was just a favorite for your photography work?
I think Cambodia or India, to be honest, just because like there's so many colors there.
Yeah.
And the scenery is so different than it is in the United States. It really shows the dichotomy of the two places. So yeah.
Did you ever have difficulty gaining the trust of the people you were photographing? Because I know in some cultures they don't want to have pictures taken.
Yeah, I mean, I tried as much as I could to ask if they wanted their picture taken, and if they didn't, I would honor that. But most people I found didn't mind having their photo taken.
Mm-hmm. Did you try to learn the language of the place where you were stationed or where you were living?
Yeah, in Cambodia, I learned like basic phrases, like how to count to 10 and like how to say hello and like ask for things. Cambodia, there's lots of iced coffee. I love iced coffee.
Yeah.
So I definitely learned how to say iced coffee.
Mm-hmm.
India, because I was just traveling there for a month, so I learned like hello and goodbye, but I didn't learn as much.
Yeah.
And then I also spent some time in Indonesia working with UNICEF.
Mm-hmm.
And there I really did study the language. I was there for 4 months. I studied the language like almost every day for a couple months. And so I got pretty good at that.
Yeah, and Spanish, that I've read you.
Yeah. I studied Spanish in school, and I went to Guatemala for 6 weeks and studied Spanish there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried really hard in Guatemala to speak the language.
Yeah, pretty friendly.
Yeah.
There too. And you've done some work on the border, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was that experience?
Yeah, in college, when I was at Arizona State, I took an in-depth reporting class where we wrote about border issues, and I wrote about remittances. And then also a young man who was caught at the border as he was trying to travel to Mississippi to earn some money for his family. And he got stopped at the border and was detained. And he was sent back home to his family in Veracruz. And a photographer and I met him at the border when he was detained. And then he went back to Veracruz, and we ended up flying down to Veracruz and seeing him in his natural home and writing about that. So the stories were very powerful and also, like, I think much needed.
Yeah. What do you think people don't understand about those who cross the border? Maybe since you've been there and you've seen it firsthand. What don't they get?
This young boy, he was, I think, 15 at the time, and he thought he was in Mississippi, and he was actually in Arizona. But all he wanted to do was he was trying to get a job so he could send back money to his mother and younger brothers. Like, that's what he wanted to do. He didn't have a father. He just wanted to send money back to his family. And to see, like, we went to his house in Veracruz, and it was like a dirt floor. There were chickens roaming in and out. It was impoverished, and he just wanted to try to make a better life for himself. And I think that's something that, like, people need to keep in mind.
Yeah, just that basic need really to kind of improve. Okay, so this is kind of a subject change, but you're this world traveler. You've seen and experienced so many things. In your book, The Main Streets of Oklahoma, Okie Stories from Every County, you mention in your introduction that small town Oklahoma, those friendly, close-knit communities where kind of life happens on Main Street really fascinated you. Can you tell me what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, sure. So I'd been living in South Dakota and moved back to Oklahoma for my job. I was working at the Associated Press at the time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to, like, get reconnected with my home state. Mm-hmm. And also, I had spent most of my time, I lived 18 years in Oklahoma at that point, probably even longer. And there's places in Oklahoma I'd never been to, like I'd never been to the Panhandle. So this book I was able to go to the Panhandle. I was able to see, like, every corner of the state, which was a lot of fun and was a great education.
What was it like undertaking the travel and the research and all the interviewing to make this book happen?
So I was working full time at the time, so I had to, like, do all the trips and research on weekends or on holidays. Mm-hmm. And so I would try to, like, I had a map of every county, and I would try to hit several of them in each trip. And of course, like, times like going to the Panhandle, I needed, like, I think I took like 3 or 4 days to do that, just because the sheer amount of driving. And it was, like, plotting a lot. And so I would try to do a lot of it. Like, some counties I knew what I wanted to focus on before I got there, and in some I went to the county and had to, like, try to find something to feature.
Oh, okay. What was that process like? Especially if you didn't know anyone.
Yeah, that was where, like, I had to go into stores and try to start talking to people, or just go to Main Street and see what was along Main Street and try to find something that might be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's how you decided on which towns to visit.
And certain counties, certain counties had, like, so the book is on Main Street, so it's literally a street name called Main. So mm-hmm. certain counties had maybe 10 different Main Streets, but other counties only had, like, 1. So that I knew I had to feature that Main Street.
Yeah. Did you take your own pictures and things too?
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges in writing this book?
Probably just working full time while writing it.
Yeah.
I would come home from work at the AP and come and write it at night. So, spend a couple hours writing it. So it was just like sheer kind of like exhaustion at times.
Yeah, I bet.
And then there was a tight deadline. I had like 9 months to do it, to complete it.
Wow.
So it was pretty tight. So I was like traveling at the same time while writing and also working.
Oh my gosh. Wow. How did you keep yourself organized? Because you had your research, you had to plan your travel, and then you had all of your interviews.
Yeah.
How did you transform that into
I mean, like
story?
I had an Excel spreadsheet and a couple just different documents that would keep me. And then that little map was really helpful because I had a map of Oklahoma broken down into the 77 counties, and I would do little designations for like, okay, I've traveled here, but I haven't written it. And then, okay, I've traveled and written. And so like I'd have like different markings for each one. And that just really helped me see it outright. Like, okay, I have this much left to do. And it was very like motivating too.
Yeah. 9 months. That's That's so much work to get done. And your and with your full-time job. Did your colleagues think you're kind of crazy?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah, that's an ambitious project. Is there a favorite story or county or place or experience that you had while writing your book?
Clearview, Oklahoma, which is one of the historically all-Black towns in Oklahoma. That was a piece of Oklahoma history that I didn't really know a lot about.
Yeah.
And this book taught me a lot about it. And I later wrote another story for Al Jazeera America about it.
Oh.
And it's something that I'm just fascinated by because it's a unique part of Oklahoma history that no other state can say that they have. And so I just really enjoyed learning about that and focusing and featuring that in the book.
Yeah. Was that one of the things that surprised you most about that?
Yeah.
Did you learn anything new about yourself as a writer and journalist as you were embarking on this project?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually an introvert, so like going up and talking to random people can be like challenging for me. And so I'd have to do that in some of these towns. I have to just go up to people and start talking. And so it was a good skill. But I found myself like proud of myself for doing that whenever I would do it.
Yeah, that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
And you have to get them to talk to you, and then you're like, hey, I'm actually writing about it.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see, if you could sum up the lessons that you learned while working on this project, what would you say? What was when you think of it, like all of these pieces that you put together in your book, what's your biggest takeaway?
I think taking small incremental steps is important. That's like what really got me through. Like if I looked at it all at once, it'd be too much. Like 77 counties, like finding stories in each one while working full time, no. But when I did a little bit each day, it got done. Like I finished it when I did a little bit each day. And I think that's like what the takeaway was. You just do a little bit each day and you can finish.
Yeah, and you have a whole book.
Yeah.
How do you think your book could help not only Oklahomans understand the state, but maybe other people as well?
Yeah, I think it can help because I try to focus on featuring like a unique piece of history, which, for example, the historically all-Black towns, people in the state, as well as landmarks. So I think there's a little bit that people can learn from in each of those categories, Oklahomans as well as people not from Oklahoma, and learn about the history as well as the present day, because I also I featured people who are just working in present day Oklahoma. Like there was a hairstylist who just talked a little bit about her town. And so you get to see a little bit of the people behind the scenes.
Yeah. Would you write a follow-up book? Or was there some hidden history or some part, some story that you found that you think you could make a whole other book out of based on what you did?
Yeah, maybe there's a couple. I mean, there's already been some written about the historically all-Black towns. But some of the historical aspects of the book I can see being made into another book. And then a lot of people, when I was writing this, they were saying that I should do it for a different state, like I should do it for like other states. But I think what made this so unique was that like I was coming back to Oklahoma and like I was kind of refinding and reconnecting with my roots in Oklahoma. I don't know if some of the other states I'd have the same feelings for.
Yeah, there's that personal connection.
Yeah.
And in your introduction, when you explained kind of your experiences going from the city to these smaller places and what that was like and what that what that meant and how
Yeah.
small towns are different.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see, and it's kind of a personal
Personal.
and,
Yeah.
that
Personal
can reflect
connection,
out in those stories. So we've already talked about some of your travels, but I was wondering, to follow up on that, what's the most dangerous story you've pursued, or did you ever feel like, whoa, I'm working on something that other people don't want me to expose this
Yeah.
truth?
So last year I had a grant through the International Reporting Project to go to India, and I was there for 4 weeks, and I was reporting on women's rights issues, which included menstrual hygiene
Yeah.
and child marriage. Those are both pretty touchy subjects. And so I didn't have any problem while I was there, but I was fairly, I was cognizant of the fact that these issues were sensitive issues. And so like certain times when I'd be in small villages and asking questions, I didn't want to come in as like the foreign reporter who thinks that this is wrong or this is not, not what we should be doing, especially like around child marriage. But I just wanted to learn what, how it's tied into their culture and religion. And so it was kind of a fine line trying to get the story, but also making it so that they knew I wasn't coming in thinking that it's wrong, like what they're doing is wrong. I'm just trying to show that this is what's going on in the location.
Did you ever run across a situation that just made you feel like you could help someone? Because it's hard not to just project our own cultural value. So let's say like with the menstruation, because I've read that some of the women and girls who have to go to these separate spaces aren't always safe, or there's risk of snakes or
with menstruation they might use like ratty rags instead of like what we use, and so it's at times like I remember sitting in like a community gathering of women there talking about menstruation and all that, and they're talking about what they use, and sometimes like their husbands would beat them if they're on their period, and so just hearing things like that, it's really hard not to have it affect you, and not to feel for them and really take it to heart and see that like the work you're doing is really important.
Do you feel like that kind of reporting can bring about some sort of change that's, let's say, culturally relevant or whatever, acceptable in that community? Do you think shedding a light on it could help change?
Well, just in that meeting that I went to, it was a meeting of probably like 20 women in a small village in the northern part of the country. I mean, I wasn't trying to come in as a Western, like with a Western ideal and everything, but just some of the questions I asked did open their eyes, because like we were talking about it, which right there is something that they don't talk about it. And so the fact that we were talking about it at all was kind of opening their eyes that like this is a subject that we can talk about. So I kind of I was trying not to bring my cultural ideals into it, but at the same time I did, just because by the sheer fact of covering the issue.
Is there any place that you've covered like India that you would want to go back to pursue maybe another book?
Project? I've always thought about like writing a book from another country, and I would love to do that.
Would India be your choice? Or
probably probably would be. I just don't know what it would be on, but
well, it's a big
there's lots of things to focus on.
Did you have a favorite place that you visited there or region?
Rajasthan, which is in the northwest. It was just very beautiful. It's on the border with Pakistan.
Okay.
And like the women had these colorful saris and all the bangles, and it's very impoverished, but it's just a beautiful city. Beautiful area.
So what's the most meaningful story that you think you've written or have worked on?
I have two, and it actually comes from my time in India. One was about these handful of girls who attended the school to play and learn soccer, and they are able to use soccer as a way to stay away from child marriage. Like they learn soccer, and they're it gave them something to do and also something to strive for, and their parents no longer felt like they had to marry them off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really proud of that story. And then I wrote another story about just child marriage in general from India and kind of looking at the different efforts underway to stymie it. And so I'm pretty proud of that story as well.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the ways that you found in that story to kind of reduce?
Yeah, well, there's like a, not university, but a project that takes in young teenage girls who would otherwise be married off, and they keep them there and keep them so that they can be educated until they're 18. So like they will eventually get married to who they're promised to before, but at least they have their education. So that was one that was really powerful. And then there was another school that was teaching feminist principles. So a lot of the girls who are married off at a young age, it has to do with lack of money and lack of opportunities from their families. And this school takes in women, young girls from low in the caste system, and teaches them like that they're equal to boys. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you don't always see in India. There's lots of like inequality. And so they teach them that they're equal to boys. It's something as simple as, I should be able to get as much food as my brother.
Wow.
Yeah, something as simple like that. And so I wrote about that in the story. And, if they can see that they're equal to their brother, they can see that, like, well, he gets an education, I should be able to get an education. And if he is able to finish school at 18, I should be able to finish school at 18 as well. So it's just kind of building upon that.
Yeah, I think, and that kind of, there's all sorts of different definitions for feminism and what that means, but just that basic want for equality.
Yeah.
Do you think a program, it would have to be different in the States, but do you think something like that could work?
Yeah, I think it would, and I think we're seeing more and more that there is still inequality.
Sure. Yeah.
Here in the U.S., it looks a little bit different, but yeah, something like along those lines, I think would be really awesome.
Yeah, it's a big issue. There will always be stories. About that. I wanted to talk about your writing process for a minute. You're a nonfiction writer, journalist.
Right.
Take me through your process, let's say from first draft to final draft. Maybe you have to deal with interviews. What kind of deadlines are you?
Yeah.
How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, so as a nonfiction writer and journalist, I initially come up with an idea, and then I figure out who do I need to speak to execute that. Mm-hmm. And that's my next one. And then setting up the interviews. And then once I do the interviews, I then transcribe the work, which is my least favorite part, transcribing.
It takes a while.
It takes a while. Transcribe, and then I sit and write. And I can actually write. I'm getting a little bit, I used to be able to write wherever. Like as long as I had a laptop, I could write like in an airport, I could write on an airplane, I could write anywhere. Now I'm getting a little bit more that like I need more quiet and like kind of focused time. But I do like to be alone usually. And I just sit and write, and I can usually write I usually give myself, like I do it for a couple hours, but I'll give myself like a couple of breaks in between. Mm-hmm. So like I'll say like, okay, write for 15 minutes and do that, or write for 30 minutes and do that. You can take a break. And then after that, once I did like the allotted, like for my book, I would do a section and then go back and take a break and then edit it. Mm-hmm. Go back and edit it, and then do it all over. And that's kind of my process.
How many edits do you usually go through? Like, how do you know when you've got the story right? This is what you're going to file and publish?
Yeah. I read over it a couple times and make changes. And then if it's like a journalism piece or like a book, the editor will also go through it. And so it might go through a couple rounds of edits then. I'm actually not someone who's like in some ways I'm a perfectionist, but I also know with writing, it's like you can work on it forever. Yeah. So I choose to make it as good as I can make it, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
I think that's the way to look at it. 'Cause people can always find a way to complain about
Right.
something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
perfectionists don't get things done.
Right. Exactly.
You got to get it done.
You got to get
There's
things
the
done.
deadlines. There's that.
Right.
There's that pressure. Do you ever feel blocked when you have to write? Like, do you ever dealt with the story that you know what the idea is, you know who to talk to, but then maybe you just feel blocked somehow?
Yeah. Sometimes getting started is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And what I usually do with that is I tell myself, you know what you're writing, you know all the people involved, just write something, write a lead, write the first paragraph. You can always change it later on, and that usually gets the juices flowing. And
taking that small step, like you mentioned, kind of breaking it down instead of getting all overwhelmed. Do you feel like you've encountered resistance either from the people you're reporting on or from professionals you work with because you're a woman?
No, I will say in some of my journalism experience, because I sometimes look young and I'm shorter, I think sometimes people don't take me as seriously as I wish they would. So I'll say that at times. And I kind of have a sweeter demeanor when I'm interviewing. And so people maybe don't see me as as authoritative as I can be. And so I'll that would probably be my biggest issue.
Yeah. Are there ways that you try to overcome that, or is it just one of those things that you work through?
I think knowing my subject matter is really important. And when I show that I know my subject matter, they gain more respect for me. And it's not always intentional. I just I lots of times get questions like, "Oh, are you writing this for school?" And it's no, I'm a professional journalist. This is gonna be published.
It's my job.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe you'll appreciate that later.
Yeah.
So what do you plan to accomplish, or what are you working on as your time as a Tulsa Artist Fellow? Tell me about that whole thing.
Yeah, so the Tulsa Artist Fellowship is a year-long process. It could also be up to 3 years. And it's a fellowship that just gives the fellows time and resources to pursue a project. And the project that I'm looking at is women in prison here in Oklahoma, since we have the we lead the nation in the number of women we incarcerate. So I want to just look at some of the issues surrounding that and some of the organizations working to change that. So right now I'm focusing on writing some long-form journalism stories about the issue. And then ultimately I would like to try to compile those into some sort of book form.
Yeah. What are some of the stories that if you can talk about that you've kind of worked on or pursued?
Yeah, so I recently, about a month ago, traveled to Oklahoma City with 3 sisters who are involved in the Girl Scouts program. The Girl Scouts have a Girl Scouts Beyond Bars program where they take Girl Scouts to see their mothers in prisons. And so we traveled down to Oklahoma City together, went to a prison and met their mom. And this was right before Christmas, and they got to spend 4 hours with their mom. And I just got to see them interact with their mom who's behind bars and how they interact with seeing her every once a month, and especially around the holidays, what that's like. So that was really enlightening and a really great experience. I also recently wrote a story about some of the tribes around here. I'm really interested in tribal affairs. Some of the tribes have reentry programs, so they help their tribal members who were once incarcerated and are now trying to get back on their feet, help them get back on their feet through various efforts, including providing clothes, providing job opportunities, sometimes providing help with housing. And so that story should be coming out shortly about the tribes, what they're doing. Another one I wrote about Residents Take Two Cafe, which is a cafe that employs former women prisoners here in Tulsa. It gives them job skills and helps them get back on their feet as well.
Why are so many women incarcerated here?
Why?
Why does Oklahoma have such a high rate of that?
We have some really tough penalties regarding drugs. I believe instead of helping women who have drug addictions get help, we often send them to prison. And so there's lots of nonviolent offenders in prison for drug-related charges. And I think we need to try to rethink how we are treating those individuals.
Have you dealt much with pregnant prisoners and how they're treated, or what life is like for them with the baby or before they have the baby?
No, I haven't, but that's definitely an issue that I hope to like look more into during this fellowship.
Yeah, it's just having a baby and then having the baby taken from the mother,
Yeah.
then that automatically, and that kind of
right.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can only imagine.
Were there any other works in progress that you kind of have in mind besides that you're working on or working towards?
No, that's
Keeps you busy.
Yeah. There is a program here in Tulsa that teaches poetry to women prisoners, and I hope to write about that. So they go into prisons and teach poetry and nonfiction writing, or just writing in general. And I want to write about, share their story and what they're doing.
Do you ever write fiction or poetry yourself? Yeah.
I have. It's been a little while, but I've done fiction before.
Yeah, so many journalists kind of start there and kind of cross over to novel writing. Where do you hope to travel to next?
Oh gosh, I really want to go to someplace in Africa. That's a continent that I've never been to. I'm thinking like Rwanda, maybe, because I sponsor a young child over there, so I'd like to maybe try to go there, or Uganda, just because I find Uganda fascinating. But yeah, I next hope to try to go to Africa at some point this year.
What's the best piece of writing advice you've ever been given?
I actually just came across this recently, but it really hit home. It's if you want to quit, don't give up, just take a break. And I think that's a really good piece of advice in life and in writing, because so oftentimes we want to quit what we're working on, but you just need to take a break and like start back over, start fresh.
Yeah,
I think that's instead of just quitting and like tossing it away, just take a break, walk away from it for a little bit, and then start fresh.
Have you ever worked on a story and worked on it really hard and, let's say, invested a lot of time and then it didn't get published, or it had to kill it?
Yeah, I actually have an instance of that right now, and I'm trying to pitch it around to other places. But it's really frustrating when I put in a lot of time and effort, and the outlet that was going to run it ended up changing directions, and so the story didn't get published. But I really think it's an important story.
Yeah.
And so I want to see it through, and I'm working to see if there's other outlets that might be interested, or if I can like reshape it maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to kind of cope with it instead of just throwing it away or giving up, trying to find someone else to pitch that to. What's the best piece of advice you have for nonfiction writers or journalists specifically?
To question things and to look around you and look at your community and try to find what is going untold. Question what needs to be questioned and look around to see where are the stories that nobody else is covering.
Is there a particular story maybe you've kind of come across here while you're doing your work as a fellow in Tulsa that you think you might want to follow up on?
I think just the woman incarceration is like what I'm going to focus most of my time on. So, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.